Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is Richard Cordell Patterson, and I will be talking about the possible futures in science fiction, from games to Mars to the diner at the end of time. This is my final project for Comparative Literature B, and I hope you do enjoy. What are we looking for? These are the 4 questions we will be talking about for each book, and I will elaborate on them now so that we won't have to for each book. Number 1. Is it set in a possible future from one point in time? This question asks, where does a point of change happen in the history or timeline that differs from our own? An example that I will use repeatedly during this project is, where does the spaceship land? And that means if a spaceship lands in the 1980s and we use the alien technology that came from it and advance our own, that means that that 1980s differs from the history of our 1980s, where there is no spaceship that landed on Earth. So it basically asks, does that actually happen, or does it just continue with our current history? Number 2, what is the point of divergence? This is asking, what point in time does the spaceship land? So, did the spaceship land in the past, in the 1980s, or did the spaceship land in 2020? If the spaceship lands in 2020, that means that there won't be that much of a big deal, because the future has not been written yet. We don't know what's going to happen, so that means that it's possible, however unlikely, that this could actually happen. Number 3, what makes the book unique? This could mean a many number of things, including settings, characters, and how the book is written. And I will elaborate on each book because it will be different for each book. And number 4, why is the book interesting? Again, this could mean a many number of things, but it means, in this context, what causes the reader to come back to reading the book, or what caused the reader to keep on reading past, say, the first chapter. So our first book is Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, Part 1. And with our first question, if you want to rewind or look back at it, our answer to it is that we have an unknown date, but it's likely to happen in the 1970s because Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy was originally a radio show that was later adapted to a book. And since the book was written to be at the current time of airing or publishing, our point of divergence, which is number 2, is the 1970s. So, in this context, it means that the spaceship landed in the 1970s, so that means that's where our history stopped lighting up. With our question number 3, the answer would be completely off the wall. So, this basically means that the way that the book was unique was because it's completely crazy. Some of the context that it gives, some of the reasoning that it gives, just to be able to move to a different area or get to a different scene, can be completely random at times. And one of the things that influences this is that when the author originally wrote the book, he was actually laying on his back in Europe drunk with a copy of Hitchhiker's Guide to Europe in his hand. And with our question number 4, why is the book interesting? Our answer is yet again because it's completely off the wall. The complete randomness of the book makes the reader want to come back and read it or continue to read it just so they can be able to know what crazy thing is about to happen next. Up next, The Hunger Games. With our question, our point of divergence is completely unknown. There are no actual hints or rumors, or well, there are rumors of, according to some of the fans. However, there is no confirmation of what time period this actually takes place in. However, we do know that it does happen in the future. Reason why we know this is because it says that Panem, or the nation, or whatever you want to call it, was built on the ruins of the United States of America. So not only does that mean that America is gone, which would have to happen in the future, it also means that things like geography would have changed. As for our point of divergence, yet again, we do not know where it is because there's no hints or confirmation of when it actually happens. But yet again, we answer it with, it happens in the future. That's about as close to it as we can get. With number 3, what makes the book unique? What makes the book unique is the different situations that the character is put in. Katniss, our protagonist, has to volunteers as tribute so that her little sister doesn't have to go into the Hunger Games, which is a complete death match. The survival aspect of it makes this science fiction book almost seem like a survival drama, or a different genre of book rather than science fiction. And because how much the Hunger Games differs from our own setting as it is right now, it makes it unique because that kind of situation doesn't happen very often. And now with question number 4, why is the book interesting? Personally, the reason why it was so interesting is because there was a unique connection to the actual protagonist, Katniss Everdeen. You could feel her emotions, her anger, her sleepiness, her exhaustion, her hunger, even at times her hopelessness, because she didn't know what to do. And now we move on to feed. With our question number 1, is it set in a possible future from one point in time? The actual point in time is around the 21st century to 2110. The reason why we know this is because it actually says in the book that it was written 100 years, that it happens around 100 years after 2002. And our actual point of divergence is yet again in the future. We don't know exactly where it would actually say in the future that it would that certain changes to our current status would happen. However, because it's in the future, that also means that it's something that's possible to happen. So it makes it a little bit simpler for us to be able to understand that it hasn't happened yet. With question number 3, what makes the book unique? What makes it unique is is the word choice that the author decided to use, and the technological advancements that happen in that world. Um, the reason why that the word choice is different is because the author used words that would show that society has kind of degraded as far as their vocabulary goes. It makes it show that uh, people use the word like a lot. Like, as an example, they would say, um, "Man, this is like totally boring or bonkers," or it makes it show that the actual I also want to say IQ level of society has dropped significantly, even adults and not just teenagers. Another thing that makes it that makes it unique is the technology that is used in the book. Um, since things called feeds are implanted into people's brains, they are actually used somewhat like an implanted smartphone. Being able to see uh, things like prices of different items, advertisements, videos, all the kind of all the stuff that you can be able to get from your actual smartphone and more is implanted in your brain. You can have instant access to it, which is very different from what a lot of people would actually think of an implant in the brain being, rather than it just be like a storage of information or a broadcast of brainwaves. It actually works like a multimedia device. And question number 4. Why is the book interesting? The reason why that the book is interesting is because you get to see the protagonist go through these different social problems that are presented to him. Um, Titus, our protagonist in Feed, has a girlfriend, Violet, whose feed is degrading and causing her mind to actually die and eventually become a vegetable. And because of his social standards with his friends, he has to find which he wants to do. Um, so things like agree with his friends, whether or not Violet is weird, or whether or not she should hang out with them. It it causes him to be at a dilemma, and usually he ends up being with Violet until towards the end of the book, where he makes a mistake, but he learns from it, even though that technically it's a little bit too late. Alright, so after all these books, what does this all boil down to? And that means, where does fiction put us in the future? Well, with our first book, um, us as humanity completely dies. Well, not completely, actually. The majority, except for 2 people, die. And in a way that's kept very grim. However, it does come from a book that contains talking mice, a diner at the end of time that was constructed so people would be able to watch time end, and the answer to anything and everything in life is 42, but you don't know what the actual question is. So, personally, I would not take that as advice to where science fiction was going to take us. I would just see it more as a comedic joke. In our second book, The Hunger Games, most of humanity becomes either high in status or a workforce. Um, it makes them uh, basically at the mercy of their government. And in some cases, that is a lot of um, that has a lot of similarities to slaves. So that again could actually be a possible thing that happens in the future. And lastly, with feed, uh, everybody in the world except for around 25% of the population get feed implants into their brain, which all in all, with how we are with our smartphones today, might not necessarily be a good thing. The book shows that everyone dumbed down and everyone is not as smart as they would be today. But then again, with how we are today and how we treat each other and also how um, smart our actual general population is, just because of not doing well in school and um, different influences in our lives cause us to dumb ourselves down, it makes it very possible that this could actually happen in the future. So, so all in all, according to these three books, our options are to either die, become a workforce, or slaves of technology. Now, what I present is a fourth option, is that don't let books determine, don't let books or anything that describes what will happen determine what will happen to you. There's always there are always prophecies and there are always decisions that people will make. But it's up to you to make that decision and whether or not you will become a workforce or you will become slaves to technology. But then again, who knows? Maybe fate actually does exist and we're all fated to die at the end of the universe. Who knows? Anyway, that is my final project for Comparative Literature B. Here are all my cited sources, and you have a wonderful day. This is Richard Patterson, signing out.